My wife asked for a simple comment letterbox for her job, and this is what I came up with. It's real simple and easy to put together, can work great for Valentine's Day or Christmas or any holiday which you want to put some letters in. So let me show you how I did this. To build this project, I picked up a 2x4 foot section of 1/2 inch plywood. I'm going with the 1/2 inch because it should be strong enough to hold everything together nice and sturdy, but light enough to carry around easily. Now I'd like to use the table saw to make most of these cuts, and to do it as is in this wide configuration would be very dangerous on the table saw. So I'm going to very carefully try and cut it right down in the middle, and that'll give me much more manageable pieces to use. On the first piece, we're going to cut out the back and the 2 sides. The sides are going to be about 5 inches wide and the back is going to be about 12. Now the top of the box is going to be set at about a 45-degree angle. And so I need to cut about a 45-degree angle here on the back of this piece as well. And to do that, I'm going to set it up on a table saw. And as mentioned before, doing a crosscut on the table saw like this can be very dangerous. And since crosscuts are unsafe, you can always build yourself a crosscut sled. This makes it a lot safer. I actually built this in a previous video. I'll put a link to that in the description. Now the blade's going to be set up for a 45-degree angle at a 17-inch cut. Now let's just do a quick measurement here. And that came out almost perfectly 17 inches. Now we'll have to make one cut on the miter saw, and that'll be for the sides. We want to measure these up just like we did for the back, find that 17 inches, and then do a 45-degree angle as well. Here's a little learning lesson for all of us. Whenever you're making your cuts, double check your measurements and your angles. I actually cut this wrong. I need to actually cut it at this angle. So fortunately, I can recut this because I cut it too long. But in some cases, you might cut it too short. So just double check all your measurements before you make those cuts. Now when I do assemble this, I'm going to have the sides on the inside kind of sandwiched between the front and the back so there's less layers seen. Next up, I want to cut out the bottom. And if we look back at that piece I cut initially with the 45-degree angle, I believe there's enough material here that I can cut that out. So let's try that. Now measuring the width, we have about 11 1/16, and the height, right about 5 inches. Now before I go any further, I'm actually going to attach the bottom and the sides. That way I can double check all of the measurements to make sure that the front and the top fit nicely. And to hold it together, we're going to use some number 2 glue and some brad nails. But if you don't have a brad nailer, that's okay. Just clamp everything together and give it some extra time to dry. I'm also going to inset the bottom just a little bit so there's less surface area touching the table. Now I flipped it over so I can add a couple more brad nails in here. And while I'm putting these sides on, I'm just using some simple corner squares and some 4-inch clamps. If you're interested in either of these, I'll put a link to those in the description. And then we're going to install the bottom in the same fashion with glue and brad nails. Now we have the back, sides, and bottom complete, and we need to cut out the front and the top. Now I'm actually going to make the top a little bit wider than the rest of the body. That way it kind of covers any imperfections I might have missed. Now looking back at the rest of our plywood, I don't want to waste a bunch of this wood. So I'm actually going to try and trim out the top and the front from one side of it and just rip it down about in the center. To do that though, I need to trim this out for the full width of the top, which I'm probably going to do about 13 inches. And then I'll have to go back and trim it down a little bit for the body, which should be at 12. Now when I want to align the front here with the bottom so it'd be nice and square, I noticed the sides are a little bit off. Now that could have been for me moving it slightly when I was cutting it, or maybe I didn't have it 100% square when I attached the sides and the back, but let's see if we can fix that. Now my original plan was just to add some glue on the sides here, clamp everything together so we don't have any brad nail holes, but I have a feeling that is exactly what I'm going to have to do. Still add the glue, position everything, and add some brad nails so it'll just hold everything nice and tight. And I almost forgot, before assembly, I actually have to cut that 45-degree angle right here on the top edge so that when the top is in place, it'll sit nice and flush. Now even though I have the brad nails in there, I decided to add some clamps until the glue dries, especially at the top here since I kind of had to twist it just a little bit. Next up is to work on the top. And of course it's going to be a little bit overhang on each side. And I believe I'm going to make it slightly overhang on the front. If I end up making it too long, I can always go back and trim this up. Once we get that length, we're going to go back here and we're going to cut this off. I believe I'm going to do it at the 45-degree angle here as well, so that it'll sit straight up in case this wants to sit against a wall. Now that we have this cut, we want to hinge this, but we don't necessarily want to do it off the back edge here. So I believe what I'm going to do is come down about an inch, inch and a half, and actually rip this all the way across. And then we'll add some decorative little hinges right there to make it look really nice. Now I have the top completely ready except for the hinges. But before I add those, I'm actually going to add this upper portion first, and that way I can get everything lined up and make sure it is as close as possible side to side. And then I'm going to add some glue and a brad nail to each of these, and that should hold it in place. And before I go any further, I actually have to cut a slot in the top of this lid. Because this is going to be a comment box, we need to have a little area that people can slide their cards in. So I drew out the area that I want to cut out. I've used a drill to drill out some holes, and that way hopefully I can use my jigsaw to cut this out. The slot came out pretty nice, but it is a little rough in the edges and I'd like to sand that out. And to do that, I'm going to take a stir stick and I'm going to take some sandpaper and wrap around it and get right in those corners. Now the lid is nearly complete, but before I attach it to the hinges, I want to add this little latch right here in the front just to keep those people out that are not supposed to be in here. And it'll be a lot easier to install this latch while the lid is loose. And there's a great way to put together a very simple comment box or letterbox, whatever you would like to call it. It latches really nicely. You can put a little lock on there if you'd like. It's flush on the back, so if we want to put this up against the wall, we can, or we can just put it out on a table, whatever you'd like. You can finish this in any type of finish you would like. You could even paint it if you would want to do that as well. Now, of course, I'd recommend before you do that is going over all the edges with some sandpaper just to smooth out anything that might be rough so nobody will get cut or snagged or anything on it. But overall, great way to make a simple little box. Now, just keep in mind we had some leftover plywood, so you can use this in an additional project. Well, I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you did, you may want to check out this one. And for those of you who waited, here's the dimensions for this box just in case you want to make one yourself.